Some of us decided that we wanted to stay in the country that we emigrated to. I call it the diaspora.
Yes.
And I think for good reason, because like
Mm.
you said, when you know better, you do better. So now all of
Mm.
a sudden we've learned a different system and a different way of navigating whatever it may be.
Yes.
Education, finances,
Yes.
family life,
Yes.
etc.
Mm. Well, hello, StemToRoots. This is your host, Mike Demba. This is where we plan on talking our way into a plan. Well, this evening is evening time for me. I have a guest that I wanted here for a long time because I'm a big fan. You guys will find out why, because we will all unravel knowing Dr. Henan Joof, as we have this conversation for the next hour. Doc, tell my people who you are, what you do, where you're from, just anything you could give us now until I ask you more questions. Just anything. Yes.
Thank you very much. I want to start off by saying it's really a pleasure to be in community with you because
Mm-hmm.
that is honestly what is my why. So who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I am the son of a Gambian and Malian couple. So my dad and my mom met while they were in college back in the 70s. And I say this to start the conversation of knowing that I have both nationalities, so Malian and Gambian, so both from West Africa. I was born in Paris, France. They were studying there, and I happened to be, the first child that was born, so in Europe. And I say this to add to the layers of I was born in Europe, of African parents, moved back to Africa when I was 13, 14, which is key in my development because I feel like I was old enough to know what I was learning. So when I started learning about the culture, about the language, about the way we eat, why we sit on the floor, I asked those questions, not just because I was told that that's what we needed to do, but at 13 years old, you're inquisitive.
Yeah.
And so who am I now? Today, since then, I have emigrated to the US.
Yes.
I've lived here for the last 24 years of my life. So half of my life has actually been spent here.
Yes.
I consider myself an African American now because one, I have the US nationality, but two, in the world of work that I'm in, a lot of the people that I come across think of me as an African American. And so I do hold that in high regard of how it is that I display what it means to be an American of African descent, an American with African roots, an American who has lived on 3 different continents. And I feel like that's what everybody is. We have a story, we have a journey that has led us where we are. And
Yes.
I try to maximize every single part of that identity that I have so far.
This is why you're so relevant to this conversation. Here at StemToRoots, mainly, we are talking to, Africans, from the continent of Africa, found for whatever reason, and we'll find out yours, find themselves in Europe or America, just anywhere outside of the continent, doing what they do, which we will find out, and why they're doing what they do away from the continent.
Yeah.
And you check all those boxes, and we wanna know. Not only are you an educator, and we'll get to that, but today we're seated here, and there'll be a lot of teaching. So, Doc, let's just go back to surprise there. I didn't know about you being born in France and back to Gambia when you were 13.
Yeah.
So at age 13, this is relevant. You mentioned this. At age 13, you were old enough, to step into that continent of Africa, coming from Europe, different place, and being in a place to ask so many questions and learn and figure out everything that you're seeing different from where you came from, France. You were able to ask and know. So education-wise, you started your early education in France, and now you ended up in Africa. Was there a difference? What was, if you were to go back to age 13, what stood out for you?
So let me. So first of all, I gave you the short version of the story, but in reality, my dad's job took us to 7 different countries before I moved back to Africa. So my dad was a diplomat. So
Uh-huh.
I was born in France, but I spent time in Belgium. I spent
Mm-hmm.
time in Nigeria. I
Mm-hmm.
spent time in Guinea-Bissau. I spent
Mm-hmm.
time all over. But the first time we moved back to live was
Yes,
when I
to
was
live.
13.
Got it.
And so, yes, in terms of education, my parents, my mom being an educator, she's a high school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
she was focused on making sure that we had the best level of education that we could afford at the time. So when we
Mm-hmm.
were in France, sure, she tried to get us into the best public schools she could afford.
Mm-hmm.
Belgium, the dual speaking languages so that we would be able
Got it.
to manage that. Nigeria, same thing. So when I moved back to Gambia, it was me adjusting again to another educational system, but that was not hard for me because I had already done that a few times.
Yes.
Did I
Yes.
see a difference in the level of education?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because
Mm.
you know I started Mrs. Now,
Yes.
and coming at the beginning of the school year in September,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't been in the class the year before, so they didn't know where to place me, grade A,
Yes.
B, or C, because
Yes.
back in the day we're tracked,
Right.
and so they put me in the D class, and I was like, all right, that's where I am, not realizing why I was in the D class, but it was just because they didn't know where to put me, and very quickly, because of my you know math acumen,
Mm-hmm.
science,
Yes.
etc. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, when I got to grade 6, they moved me to A,
Mm.
because now I've gotten some grades to prove why I should be in the other class, which was a little bit more
In the A
competitive for
class.
me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, which I think in hindsight was good, because all of a sudden now I was with my peers and I was able to discuss things. Till today, there's people that I think of that we were the nerds,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
talking about the United Nations,
Yeah.
and friends that lived at MRC, and so their parents
Yes.
were doctors, and we're talking about
Yes.
things like that. So
Yeah.
did I see a difference in the education? Yes. Do I think the Gambian education was a lower level than some of the others? No, absolutely not. Mrs. Ndao
Mm.
really prepared me.
Got it.
It was just a different way of navigating
Right.
education, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I got that, because to be honest with you, it set me on the path for graduating high school and graduating elementary school and going to St. Augustine's for 2 years.
Yes.
My
Yes.
dad had gone to Sense, and he said,
You
he
have
took me
to.
to Father Murphy, and said, treat him the way you treated me.
Yeah.
So I went for the first 2 years at Sense, and then finally transferred to Marina, and that's why I graduated high school. But
Mm-hmm.
I think my initial years at Mrs. Now actually were crucial in getting me ready for the path in the education I was going to get in Gambia.
Oh, great, great. So education in Gambia, high school level, St. Augustine's, and then Marina, and
Mhm.
then you graduated high school, and then what? Did you come to the state straight after high school?
So I graduated high school, and much like a lot of young graduates, the question was, what's next?
Uh-huh.
So I was, I think, a good learner, a good test taker. So I had taken the SATs, I got a
Okay.
good score.
Okay.
But getting into college, I applied to a few colleges, and so this is in 1999 for
Mm-hmm.
our
Yeah.
listeners. So this
Yes.
is pre, internet being available everywhere.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
SATs was done by paper. I
Mm-hmm.
applied to certain schools, and
Right.
you get the letter in the mail in Africa 6 weeks later that
Yeah.
tells you, "Hey, congratulations, you
Yeah.
got into UCLA." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, I got in." Now, what does this mean? It means $32,000 a year, which my parents don't have.
Mm.
And so for the first time, I saw both of my parents kind of look at me and say, "We're proud of what you've achieved, and yes, education is something we want you to pursue, but
Right.
we don't have the financial means
Right.
to make that jump right now."
Right. Right.
And so in that moment, I kind of looked at my mom and dad and I said, "Okay, well, then I need to work for this." And so when I graduated high school in June, I moved back to Paris with my godfather who lived there. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to work and save money so that I can come to the US and attend school." So that's exactly what I did. I moved to Paris. First, from June through December, I was working at a cancer research institute. It was the first job that I found there. They needed bilingual people. So I spoke French, I spoke English. It worked perfectly for me. It was my first trying to find a job in the year 2000, while everybody was worried about Y2K compliance, etc.
Yes. Yeah.
And after 6 months, I had enough money to come to the US. But again, I didn't have $32,000.
Right.
And so I started thinking, next step, plan B,
Yes.
community
Yes.
college. So that's how I ended up at a community college. And probably the best thing that ever happened to me,
Oh, that's
because
great.
at the community college, I was able to learn the landscape of education in the US and
Mm.
how I would then navigate going from a community college to a 4 year school,
Yes.
getting my master's, getting my
Yes.
doctorate.
Yes.
And I didn't know any of this coming to the US. And so starting at a community college really set me up for, oh, okay, that's what I want to do next.
That's
This is
where.
how I'm going to pay for it. Here are the scholarships, etc.
Yeah, you answered a question that I was going to go to because I wanted to know that. And you went to community college, 4 year college, and masters and your doctorate. Tell us what your doctorate is on.
Sure. So my doctorate is in educational leadership. So most people that get an educational leadership doctorate are folks that will be running educational institutions. So when you look at the leaders at a private university, at a
Right.
public university, they're people that know how to run an educational institution, which is different from a business, because even though we run it as a business, our goal isn't to make money. Our
Yes.
goal is to have graduates that can then be productive members of society. So what does that look like? So like
Yes.
today, my job is to make sure that the graduates are able to work in an AI environment. My job is to think of the jobs that haven't, fully developed yet and provide students with the skill set so that they can figure that out. So that's really what my educational leadership doctorate is in, was learning how to, for lack of a better word, forecast what the needs of our community
Yes.
will be and provide our students with those types of educational experiences.
Doc, you're so relevant to our conversation here at StemToRoots. As you're giving me these answers, there's so much going on in my head. So let me let me ask you this first: the choice to be an educator, educational leadership. This is something that I've never even heard. So your doctorate is on educational leadership. The choice to do that. When did you know you wanted to do that?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you asked the question because recently my grandmother passed away, and she was an educator. And
Your mom educator, your grandma educator.
You touched on it right now.
All right.
And it wasn't until she passed away and I was reflecting on her impact on what she has done that I started realizing that I have always had educators in my life. Those have always been my role models. You only mentioned 2, but I have another 6 that are all educators. So I don't know at what point education, the gems for education was being dropped in my well.
Yeah.
But my personal journey into education really was, like I mentioned, community college first.
Got
And
it.
in the community college, I had a college counselor who said, you know what? There's a lot of that you could be doing more. Don't sell yourself short. You should be shooting for something more. And I said, okay. At the time, I was studying economics and business.
Yes.
And I thought I wanted to work on Wall Street.
Yes.
And then 9/11 happened, and I was like, I don't know that I want to move to the Twin Towers type area. I honestly was fearful because the world at that time was changing.
Right. Was.
And so when I transferred and started looking at education, it was like, oh, wait, I can work on a college campus and advocate for students and advocate for other people to get an educational experience. This is something I can do. They will pay you to do this? Oh, okay, great. And so I started looking into that as, just a student services professional on a college campus.
Okay.
And then having experiences with my best friend that took a different route. He went to Harvard. And just looking at his experience, I was like, oh, wait, what he is studying over there at Harvard is the work that I'm currently doing here. How much better could I be doing my job if I knew what he knew? And that's when the light bulb went off for me. And I was like, I'm going back to school to get my master's. I'm going back to school to get my doctorate, because I knew that in the conversations I was having with him, we were debating about things. And I'm like, he's talking theory, I'm talking practice.
Yes.
And the best case scenario is when you marry the two, because now all of a sudden the theory is elevated, the practice now is informed. And so that's what made me go back and get my master's and my doctorate literally back to back. I did not take a break after that because I knew this was the journey for me. Now, 20 years later, I look back at it and I'm like, my grandmother prepared me for this. My mother prepared me for this.
It was
it was subconscious.
Subconscious. It was sitting there back there. Especially something profound you just mentioned is the fact that with conversations you were having with your best friend,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing that, going for more will put you in a position to be more of service, to be able to fulfill those things that you feel like going back for your education will actually, add more, will make that's just so profound that at the back of your mind, what you wanted to do is be more valuable, to
Oh,
go
absolutely.
be able to be more helpful.
Absolutely.
Doc, let me go way back. Let me go all the way back to um see here at StemToRoots. Like, so I've been collecting data.
Yeah.
Everybody that I've been talking to, something relevant to what we chat about here
Mm-hmm.
is why we stayed. A lot of us. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
here 20 years. As of January, 20 years. So
Yeah.
you came here 4 years before me,
Yeah.
and I have my whys, and the other whys that I've collected, some of them similar, some slightly twisted. Uh, um, a big one has been education. Not only did we come here, most of us came here for that education bit. Oh, let me go get my higher education in America. We got here, and 4 years became eight became a decade,
Mm-hmm.
and some of us started a family, and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, education wise, should if by the 12th grade or by the end of high school, I thought the next step, next level for my education is go out there, and I chose America to come here for my education, and I happen to be here long enough to start a family here.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I look at my family and put them in a position where we will go back again for them to shoot for higher education
Yeah.
away from home? So that kind of debate, internal debate, some of these conversations you have with your friend, spouse, or whoever. I want to know from you as an educator. You know the landscape. You know Gambia. You know Mali. You know a lot about the continent as a whole. You're a very informed person. Those of us that made the choice based on education here in the States, like, oh, I want to educate myself, I want to educate my family, and we chose here. How do you compare that educational landscape as far as, like, just because now I'm talking about globally,
Yeah. Yeah. I understand.
maximizing that time on that education to be able to be useful globally? How will you assess? How will you grade our choice
Yeah.
to stay?
Well, so honestly, hindsight is 2020.
Mm,
So, and I am the type of person who makes the best decisions with the information I have at that time.
at that
If the
moment.
if the information changes, then I have no regrets. I know that I
Mm,
made the best decision at that time.
at
And I
that
think it's
time.
the same with a lot of us.
Mm,
So if we look at the last 20 years, the world has changed. The educational systems have changed. Access to information has changed. And
mm,
so the decisions we were making in 2000, 2010, 2015, it's almost unfair to compare them with what is available now,
today. Mm,
because we were forced to make decisions based on, you know, 9/11 just happening. So
right,
the travel between different
right,
countries was different.
right.
The internet was actually becoming more and more widely accessible. So
Mm,
you could actually take, online courses from different countries.
mm,
The European Union was just forming, so all of a sudden, there's some of us that decided to go to Europe because all of a sudden, whether you're in the UK or France or Norway, there was
you
an
had access to
ability for
Europe.
you to have
Mm,
access to all those
mm,
things,
mm,
which also had an effect on the opportunities that Africans had, because we Africans had different relationships with those Western countries. So all
mm.
of a sudden, the scholarship opportunities that our
Yes,
parents had were
yes.
from Russia, the
Mm,
UK, etc.
right, right.
Now, our generation, the
Mm.
scholarships were coming from where? China, Turkey. So the opportunities are
That's
different.
so
And so,
true.
yes,
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing that we took advantage of the opportunities that were available to us. Some of us decided that we wanted to stay in the country that we emigrated to. I call it the diaspora.
Yes.
And I think for good reason, because like
Mm.
you said, when you know better, you do better. So now all of
Mm.
a sudden we've learned a different system and a different way of navigating whatever it may be:
Yes.
education, finances,
Yes.
family life,
Yes.
etc.
Mm.
And now the question is, do I take what I've learned and try to go back to Gambia because that's where I started, or
Yes.
because I want to contribute to that system of living? or do I try to continue to evolve myself in this new system that I'm in? And that's if you've actually reached the goal that you wanted. Because for
Yes,
some people, they haven't. They're
they
still working
haven't.
towards
They're
something.
still working towards something.
So for me, it's a personal choice. Either
Yes.
everybody has different circumstances,
Mm.
whether it be family that will pull them back home, whether
Yes.
it's, oh, I've gotten my degree now, and really what I want to do is go back and start that business. I
Yes.
want to affect healthcare in the Gambia or in
Yes.
the diaspora, or wherever it may be.
Yes.
And that will then push you to say, okay, great, the time is now. Because
Mm.
honestly, 20 years later, I feel like I'm currently at the place where my peers are currently having that debate. Is I've been
Ah.
here long enough.
Yes.
It is my responsibility to give back, and the question is to give back where or how,
I see.
in whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Recently there were conversations about the National Assembly, hot topic issues that were being
Right.
discussed there.
Mm.
And I want to stay away from politics, but my point is,
Yes.
as we in the diaspora were looking at what was being discussed in the National Assembly,
Yes.
who do we have to blame? We're not there.
Yeah.
We're not involved in the day to day, and yet from afar we want to be controlling and we want to influence
Mm-hmm.
public discourse and
Mm.
laws. That's
Mm.
not the way it works. The folks on the ground that ran for office are the ones that will be able to do those things. And so then you start thinking, oh, maybe I do want to move back. Maybe I do want to support specific candidates. Maybe I
Uh-huh.
do want to. So
Uh-huh.
that to me
Uh-huh.
is the crux of it. And for some people they decide to make that decision 10 years in.
Yes.
For the rest of us, I'm still here 24 years later, and figuring out ways in which I want to be involved, because I have been involved, but it isn't physically me moving back. It's how do I support specific agendas,
Yes.
candidates, businesses,
Yes.
etc.
Yes. And we want to uncover those. So part of what we want to do here at STEM2Roots is uncover how, if that choice has been made to be here for reasons that are some personal, some like specific, right? So, but for whatever reason, we want to discuss, we want to uncover, we want to put on the table all those, whether solutions, whether those are ways, to not be where we are from geographically and still have an impact, that is worthwhile. Like even you said it yourself, things have changed so much as far as like access goes. You can sit here today, the way you're able to communicate and have impact in Gambia today, you can't compare 20 years ago. As far as and the opportunities are endless.
Yes.
So thanks for that. I want to know something, Doc. This is a conversation around our circle of friends, and
Yeah.
all of us starting families now and looking at education. Something you mentioned is how much education has changed, and there's something I noted down that I'll get to in what you do today. But how much education has changed, and now I'm looking at my father, my dad had a big take. Actually, the decision to go to university, to go to college and graduate, was 99% him.
Yes.
Right. I had no say in that. Right. And now that my oldest is 5, I have 13 years to think about this. When he gets to decide whether to go to college, I am taking that stance that my say is not that 99%. It will be a different one. How do you assess that? How have things changed that I cannot be my father, to my son?
I mentioned this already, which was, when you know better, you do better. And so I think our parents did the right thing that they could at the time. They grew up in an era of, revolution, independence, access to education, and believing that the only way they were going to take where they were and access the next level was through education.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them went out of the country. Like, I have an uncle that went to Russia, and I'm like, at 21, how did he learn the Russian language to go study there in a major that I don't even think he was interested in? It was just the opportunity was there, and he went, and he made his life out of it. And so for them, the way for social mobility is through education. So that's why
Mm.
they impressed it on us is
Hmm.
this is how you go.
This is,
Now
yeah.
for us, we are now standing on their shoulders from
Mm.
that point. We've taken
We
that
are.
step already.
We are.
So now with our kids, the next generation, we're actually saying, no, we don't want you to be pigeonholed into just this one way of
Mm.
social mobility. We
Mm.
want you to actually study something that you are interested in, that you are passionate about, and figure out how it is that you want to have that impact. I see
Mm.
that every day on college campuses. I will see a parent that comes in with the son or daughter, and immediately I zero in on the student or the potential student.
Okay.
And I tell them, my conversation is with you and not your parent. Because at the end of the
Mm.
day, the person that's going to be up in the middle of the night taking those classes, studying, is you, not your parent. The person that's going to graduate or fail their class is you, not your parent. So I
Mm.
want you to commit to this with me. And if you're not ready for it, then let's talk about what's going to get you there. And most of the times that works for the parent because they understand that I'm on their side. I'm
Uh-huh.
just doing it in a different way. And I'm
Right.
very open about it so that they can see it, so they understand. Look, I'm not
Mm.
going to deal with you. I'm not going to call you and tell you that your son didn't come to school or your daughter has cut class. No, no, no. These are life lessons that they need to learn so they can be productive members of society. Me
Wow.
going through you isn't going to help.
Yeah.
Going through them is the
Yeah.
best way to go. So that's
Ah,
my take on it now. I think it also is the way to go just because, in my experience, there's more
yes.
ways to learn than just school.
Hmm.
So there's formal school, and there's, for those of us that went to St. Augustine's
Yes.
and sat, at outside the school for half
Yes.
of the day,
Yes.
there's things we learned there too. And we just have to give credit to the fact that, you know, there's a part of me that matured by doing that, by
Oh,
learning that. And
yes.
so today I can't sit and be, Mr. Doctorate is
Yes.
looking down on the outside of school experience, the outside of
Mm.
academic experience, or somebody that wants to work with their hands, like a
Yes.
CNC,
Yes.
digital arts and media, welding.
Yes.
Those are
Yes.
all things that need to happen so that we can continue to evolve as a community. So I'm open to all of those, and I want to be able to give our next generation all of those options instead of them just thinking it's education, it's books, it's a degree, and that's how you move forward. Not every time.
Doc, there's a lot of questions I have about that, and I'm gonna come to that. I can't believe we're halfway in. I don't believe it. I'm looking at the time, and all right. Here, I'm gonna woosa, I'm gonna pause. This is at STEM to Roots. We take a break, and we lighten it up a little bit. So I want you,
Yeah.
this game we play is tell me something you think I don't know, where you tell me something you think I don't know. If I know it, I'll tell you, Doc. I know that. Try again. If I don't, I'll admit to it because I'm talking to Dr. Henan Joof. There's 1,000 things you know that I don't know. So give me one.
One thing that I think you don't know.
Yes.